Okay, so this series started by raising a bunch of issues.
Some of which were unexpectedly answered in this episode.
Looks like you're going to have to eat your words.
Some of them anyway. Hit it. So I guess all of what happened on board the Maginot is due to scientists being extremely bad at their job, just like what happened on the Prometheus. And I thought the creator of this show wasn't harking back to those prequel movies.
Well, not everything, McCluck. There was also a saboteur on board.
You know, before we go any further, I was actually wondering why this episode exists at all. I mean, we've spent 4 episodes following the adventures of those robot children, whose name we only just managed to remember after all this time. And now, we're presented with an episode-long flashback to see what happened to the ship that crashed. And we need to remember a whole bunch of new names, even though we know they're all gonna die anyway.
Except for Morrow.
Yeah, except for him. And, okay, I know I said this episode did answer a bunch of questions I had.
You did indeed.
And we'll get to those. But it also raised a bunch more. Like, how do you manage to get yourself out of a functioning cryobed?
That is perhaps the biggest question here.
And I know the ship's sabotage means it ran out of fuel, which might be the writer's way of trying to explain why the ship didn't obliterate the city when it crashed. Except, meteors don't have fuel either. It's their velocity that generates the energy needed to destroy anything upon impact. The fact that Maginot ran out of fuel wouldn't have affected the devastation much.
It must have been fitted with really strong plot armor plating.
That must be it. So, this flashback episode is not only a partial retread of the Alien movie, it also tries to shoehorn a police investigation at the same time. And I think, for the most part, it actually works. So much so, there was a point I'd totally forgotten there was a xenomorph on the loose.
It's always a little weird when we know the fate of everyone in the story. It leads to a lack of urgency, while at the same time, kind of a morbid curiosity to find out what happened.
Welcome to the rubbernecking mentality. But yeah, somehow the saboteur got out of cryosleep without anyone noticing, sabotaged crucial stuff without anyone noticing, and opened the door to the xenomorph eggs without anyone noticing.
Well, Petrovich, the saboteur, was the chief engineer, so he must have known his ship inside out.
Okay, yeah, maybe, but that doesn't explain how an engineer would know what those eggs would do.
They've been collecting those species for a while. They knew, for instance, a xenomorph can survive in space. I don't know how they knew that, frankly, but they knew it, which explains why a chestburster was able to, burst out while in cryosleep.
Just like it did at the start of Alien Cubed. Yet despite that knowledge, they didn't know those creatures bled acid, which led to the death of the captain before Morrow was awakened. Oh, and they also knew to call them xenomorphs, even though that's actually a generic term for alien species, not the specific name of those alien creatures we know and love.
I know, we dealt with that in the last episode.
So yeah, this episode was all about watching a car crash in slow motion. We knew everybody was gonna die, so we were just here for the blood-soaked popcorn.
Like, who's going to drink the water canister infected with worm babies? And when?
Exactly that. It did answer some questions that had been bothering us for a while.
Like, why were the search and rescue teams so heavily armed?
Even though they were useless at using those weapons.
And that's because Boy Cavalier knew what was on board.
The twat could have told his men what to expect, mine.
Well, it just shows how casual he treats human life.
I also appreciated how Morrow knew of Boy Cavalier and Prodigy, even though that company didn't exist when he left Earth on that mission.
Yeah, because he intercepted a communication between him and the saboteur.
And it's also because despite the fact they were away for so long, they were in contact with Earth and knew of certain developments. Which reminds me, why on earth would people with families elect to go on a 65-year mission?
I don't have an answer for you. We know from Morrow's flashback inside a flashback that he loved his kid, so why leave?
And the mechanic, from the convoy he had with his apprentice, it's possible he might have loved his wife.
Maybe we'll get answers to this one and hopefully others later on. Like, maybe they didn't have a choice? Slave labor and all?
Maybe. Do you think they'll explain how the saboteur knew of Prodigy's consciousness transfer project? Because I thought that was super secret, to the point the children couldn't tell their families, who thought they had actually died, that they may be alive and well in robot bodies.
I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Another thing I liked was the possible explanation for why the xenomorph went on an unusual murder rampage. It's because it may be controlled by one of those eye octopuses.
Well, except it did kill before its possible infection. I mean, it did kill Tang,
who was waiting in the interrogation room long after Morrow had finished questioning him and left. Like, that made sense. Just like the containment breach was all due to doctors doing sloppy work. Why hire subpar people?
To be fair, the crew clearly weren't the best of the best. Heck, they hired a pervert in the shape of Tank, so they weren't top-class material. Unlike the crew of the Prometheus, who were supposed to be actual experts, and yet acted like absolute idiots.
So now, we know there are multiple eye octopuses and bloodworms wandering around. I very much doubt they would have been all captured by Prodigy's team, since they didn't know how much of a breach there really was. Not to mention, those buggers are pretty clever and highly resourceful.
I guess they'll love it on Earth. There's a fair amount of blood on that planet.
And eyes. Oh, do you think the xenomorph Wendy killed had that eye octopus on or in it?
Could be. Would explain its indiscriminate rampage.
And its uncharacteristic trap-laying skills. Think it went into her and that's why she could hear the monsters?
Nah, she could hear them before her fight with it, if I remember correctly. And she's a robot, nowhere for the eye to latch onto. Plus, you'd think they would have noticed it when they ran diagnostics on her.
Speaking of Wendy, do you think they left us hanging with a pretty big cliffhanger last week, only for it not to be mentioned at all in this episode?
That was frustrating, I'll admit.
Yeah, but despite that, I actually was surprised at how much I enjoyed this episode.
Guess you're a bit of a rubbernecker yourself.
Must be. It was well shot, and the descent into chaos was well handled, for the most part. If there was one moment I really didn't like, it's when the xenomorph stood right next to the acting captain, then somehow lost ground to her while she ran away. It was right next to her at the start, and we know how fast those things are.
Maybe it was just enjoying the hunt.
Maybe. Not convinced, though. I trust the story will move forward from now on. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I miss those robot kids.
They were the main reason for our interest in the series.
Even though this eye octopus monster may quite likely be stealing the show. Alright, we're done here for this episode, and I'm giving it 3 nuggets. So, if you like what we do,
and how we do it,
and you feel you'd like to help us out,
please consider joining our Patreon.
As long as you can afford it, of course.
We'll leave a link to it in the description and pinned comment.
Thanks for watching. Do let us know what you think in the comments, and I'll give you the response you deserve. Who was waiting in the interrogation? Who was waiting in the interrogation? Who was waiting in the